The first thing I noticed when I opened my front door that morning wasn't the sunrise or the smell of fresh pine. It was two guys in neon vests hammering a massive metal sign into the ground at the head of my driveway. Private road, HOA access, authorized only. Behind them stood Beverly Sanderson, clipboard clutched against her chest like a medieval shield, her little white yap dog vibrating with excitement at her feet. And me? I was standing there in pajama pants, a no-soliciting t-shirt, and socks with holes in the toes, holding my coffee like it was the only thing keeping me from committing a felony. "Morning," Beverly chirped without looking at me, and as if I were the one trespassing. She pointed at the workers with her pen. "Make sure you anchor it deep. We need it to withstand weather and potential tampering." Tampering. Right. I took a slow sip of my coffee, blinked a few times, and then asked the only logical question. "Did you guys get lost?" I said. "Or are you just this confused every Monday?" Beverly finally turned to me with that tight-lipped, queen of the castle smile she always wore when she was about to say something wildly stupid. "Chris, as per Silver Pines HOA Bylaw 7B, Section 3, all communal access points must be clearly marked for community safety." I glanced at the sign, then at the gravel road stretching behind me, my driveway, my private land, leading straight to my workshop and house, legally purchased with blood, sweat, and about 1 million signatures when I escaped city life 2 years ago. "That's interesting," I said slowly, setting my coffee down on the porch railing, "because unless the bylaws also magically granted you rights to private property, you're about 3 feet away from a trespassing charge." Beverly's smile faltered. Just a flicker. The dog yapped once like it was trying to cover for her. She cleared her throat, shifted her clipboard against her chest, and said, "Your property is adjacent to the Silver Pines Community Zone, and as such, it is subject to..." Nope. I cut her off mid-sentence. Not adjacent, not within, and definitely not subject to. This driveway? I pointed behind me with my thumb. Was carved out by my grandfather in 1962. It's been private longer than you've been alive. The workers looked uncomfortable. One of them muttered something about not getting paid enough for this, which was probably the smartest thing to said on that gravel all morning. Beverly, to her credit, didn't yell. She didn't back down either. She simply straightened her clipboard like it was Excalibur, sniffed once, and said, "We'll be following up with an official notice of violation." I almost laughed. Instead, I picked up my coffee again, took another slow sip, and said, "Good. Make sure it comes on good, absorbent paper. Gonna need it after the rain tomorrow." The sign went up anyway. The workers finished hammering it in, looking everywhere but at me as they packed up. Beverly clipped something to my mailbox, a manila envelope, and strutted away like she'd just won a court case. I watched her go. Watched the sign glint in the morning sun. Watched my peaceful life take its first real hit. And somewhere deep down, I knew. This was war, and Beverly had just fired the first shot. 2 years earlier, when I first bought this place, I thought I was living the dream. 5 acres of peace and dirt and sky, no traffic noise, no neighbor's dog barking until 2 a.m., no one asking why I hadn't mowed my grass every 72 hours like some kind of botanical drill sergeant. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Old farmhouse, gravel driveway my grandfather probably cursed every time he tried to plow it. A crooked shed that leaned just enough to make you wonder if it was falling or just stubborn. Exactly what I wanted. The neighborhood, if you could even call it that, was loose. A scattering of houses tucked back into the trees. Some folks had white fences and American flags. Others had rusted trucks half swallowed by weeds. No one really cared what anyone else did, so long as you didn't start fires or blast death metal at 3 a.m. There was a real HOA here, Silver Pines HOA. But when I moved in, it was basically a ghost organization. A few volunteers collected dues once a year to cover pothole patching and a sad excuse for a community newsletter. That mostly listed upcoming garage sales and warnings about suspicious raccoons. Nobody bossed anybody around. Nobody posted violation notices for painting their front door the wrong shade of beige. It was bliss, until Beverly Sanderson moved in. It started small, like it always does. A memo here, a flyer there. Reminders about community pride. Friendly suggestions about maintaining visual consistency across properties. At first, I didn't think much of it. Some people just need projects to feel important. Harmless. Then the memos got thicker. Official letterheads appeared. Bylaw numbers started getting thrown around. Beverly got herself elected HOA president, unopposed, of course, because nobody else wanted the damn job. And suddenly she acted like she'd been crowned Empress of Silver Pines. Clipboards became a common sight. So did her mutt, Pepper, who apparently thought yapping at passing clouds was a full-time occupation. Still, I figured, hey, whatever. Let her have her fantasy. I wasn't about to start a war over strongly worded memos stapled to telephone poles. Then she decided that peace and quiet weren't good enough. She decided Silver Pines needed unity. And by unity, she meant everyone doing exactly what Beverly wanted, exactly when she wanted it. Which is how we got here. How I ended up watching strangers pound a sign into my private driveway, while Beverly stood there nodding approvingly, like a queen bestowing land grants on loyal peasants. I should have seen it coming. I should have known peace never lasts. When someone with too much time, too little power, and a deep personal attachment to clipboards gets involved. And deep down, I knew. This wasn't going to be one of those file a complaint and move on situations. This was the opening salvo in what was about to become a full-blown HOA civil war, and I was going to make damn sure I didn't lose it. It didn't even take a full week after the private road HOA access authorized sign went up. Before Beverly made her next move, it came in the form of a bright orange envelope duct taped to my mailbox. Real classy. Inside was a letter printed on thick, unnecessarily expensive cardstock with the Silver Pines HOA logo at the top. I unfolded it, leaned against the mailbox, and started reading. Notice of noncompliance. Subject: unauthorized mailbox aesthetic. Apparently my mailbox, a simple black metal box with a little red flag, was not in alignment with the Silver Pines Community Aesthetic Guidelines. Section 4, Subsection B, Color Coordination Standards. Translation: it wasn't beige. I stared at the letter for a long minute, the morning sun heating the paper in my hands, and then looked at my mailbox like it might suddenly grow a second head. I live 300 feet off the main road. My non-compliant mailbox was surrounded by nothing but trees, gravel, and the occasional confused squirrel. Nobody but the mail carrier and the occasional lost Amazon driver ever even saw it. But apparently my offensive black mailbox was a threat to the very fabric of community cohesion. At the bottom of the letter, in bold red letters, it said, "Corrective action, required within 7 days to avoid additional penalties." I actually laughed out loud standing there next to the road like some kind of lunatic. Penalties. For having a mailbox that didn't match Beverly's preferred shade of suburban oatmeal. I flipped the letter over, half expecting there to be a color swatch taped to the back. There wasn't. Missed opportunity, honestly. I crumpled the notice into a tight ball and tossed it into the bed of my pickup truck and went back inside to refill my coffee. Let her come. Let her find me. I wasn't about to spend my Saturday afternoon repainting a perfectly good mailbox, because Beverly had a god complex and a Pinterest addiction. Still, I had the sneaking suspicion that ignoring her first salvo wasn't going to make her back off. If anything, it was probably going to make her double down. People like Beverly didn't respond well to being ignored. It was like throwing gasoline on a bonfire fueled entirely by passive-aggressive HOA newsletters, and homemade cookies nobody actually wanted. But for now, I sipped my coffee and smiled, because Beverly had just taken her first official swing, and she was about to find out that some people don't just swing back, some people aim. Ignoring Beverly was like poking a bear made entirely out of glitter pens and small claims court threats. 3 days after the mailbox stunt, I came home from town to find survey flags lined up like little fluorescent soldiers across the entrance to my driveway. Pink ones, orange ones, even a few bright blue ones for that festive, "your land isn't yours anymore" vibe. They weren't just by the road either. They marched a good 20 feet up my gravel drive, weaving past the old oak trees like some drunk land pirate had tried to claim territory with plastic swords. And parked just off the road? A contractor truck, big white lettering down the side. Silver Pines, HOA Community. Improvement Team. I killed the engine, sat there in my truck for a second, and just stared. Like maybe if I squinted hard enough, the flags would disappear. Spoiler alert, they didn't. One of the workers noticed me and gave a little awkward wave. Another guy in a hard hat was talking to Beverly, who stood at the end of my driveway holding a rolled up set of blueprints like she was about to break ground on a shopping mall. I climbed out of my truck, casually grabbed a survey flag as I passed and twirled it between my fingers as I walked up. "Afternoon," I said, smiling like I wasn't 2 seconds away from committing a felony. Beverly smiled back, that tight upper lip smile people reserve for dogs that just peed on the carpet. "Chris, just in time. We're marking preliminary zones for the community access project. Road widening, new landscaping, a decorative entrance gate. Oh, it's going to be beautiful." She clapped her hands like I was supposed to start applauding. I pointed down at the survey flag trail. Interesting, especially since none of that's happening on HOA-owned land. Beverly's smile tightened another millimeter. Well, under Section 5C of the HOA Development Enhancement Plan, we have rights to improve adjacent access routes essential to community flow. I blinked at her, once, twice. Then I said, "You made that up just now, didn't you?" Her eyes flickered just for a second, and Pepper, her yappy dog, barked once as if trying to cover the silence. One of the construction guys glanced between us, clearly sensing he was standing in the blast radius of something about to go nuclear. I crossed my arms. "You realize this isn't an access road. It's a private driveway, recorded with the county, grandfathered before your HOA ever existed." Beverly pulled herself up to her full 5'3" height, which wasn't exactly intimidating unless you were a particularly nervous mailbox. "Chris," she said, voice syrupy and slow, "we're doing this for the good of the community. We're trying to maintain property values. You wouldn't want to be responsible for dragging down the whole neighborhood, would you?" Ah, there it was. The guilt grenade. I smiled wider. "Nope. That's why I'm going to give you and your crew about 10 minutes to clear out before I call the sheriff." Her nostrils flared. Pepper barked again. For half a second, I could see the wheels turning in her head, calculating whether she had enough legal mumbo-jumbo to bluff her way through. She didn't. Finally, she gave a tight little nod to the workers, who immediately started yanking up flags like they were trying to set a land speed record for retreat. As they packed up, Beverly leaned in close, just enough that only I could hear. "This isn't over, Chris. You're either part of the community, or you're a problem the community has to solve." I took a slow sip of my lukewarm coffee, still in the travel mug from town, and said, "Well, I guess you better start drafting a community problem-solving committee, huh?" She stormed off without another word, Pepper bouncing at her heels. I stood there a minute longer, surveying the little pockmarks where the flags had been. The first attack had been paperwork. The second, territorial invasion. And something told me the third was going to be even dumber. I wasn't wrong. Beverly was just getting warmed up. The next morning, I decided to do the responsible thing. Not because I thought it would work. Even an optimist would have taken one look at Beverly and booked a seat on the first train to Nopeville. But because I wanted it all documented. If things went south, and let's be real, they were already halfway to Argentina, I needed a paper trail longer than Beverly's list of imaginary bylaws. Step 1. I dug through the official HOA charter. It took me about 10 minutes to find the relevant section buried under 200 pages of bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo. Turns out the Silver Pines HOA's jurisdiction ended exactly at the entrance to the subdivision. Not 1 inch onto private parcels unless the owner had signed a voluntary access agreement. Spoiler, I hadn't. My property wasn't even technically part of their original development map. I was listed as external private property in the zoning documents, which is legalese for not your circus, not your monkeys. Step 2. I wrote a formal cease and desist letter. Short, simple, polite enough that no one could accuse me of being hostile, but firm enough that even Beverly's glitter-addled brain would understand I wasn't playing. Dear Silver Pines, HOA, this letter serves as formal notice that my property, including all structures and access routes, is private land not subject to Silver Pines HOA regulations. Any further unauthorized entry, modification, or activity will be considered trespassing and addressed accordingly. I signed it, slapped a copy of my deed on the back for good measure, and hand-delivered it to the HOA's official drop box. A sad little weather-beaten filing cabinet bolted to the side of the community clubhouse. Then I went home, made myself a sandwich, and waited. 3 days of blissful silence passed. I almost let myself believe Beverly had gotten the message. Maybe she'd finally realized she was out of bounds. And decided to go pick a fight with someone whose biggest defense wasn't a half-dead mailbox. Hope, as it turns out, is a dangerous drug, because on the 4th morning, taped neatly to my front door, was a brand new notice. This time, it was printed on heavy cream paper with a gold-embossed HOA seal at the top, like it was a wedding invitation to a dictatorship. Urgent Community Compliance Order. Under subsection 9B of the Emergency Community Safety Guidelines, it read, all residents were obligated to comply with infrastructure enhancement initiatives deemed essential by HOA leadership. Translation. Beverly had decided that if she couldn't follow the actual rules, she'd just invent new ones. At the bottom in Beverly's neat cursive was a handwritten note. Your cooperation is not optional. Non-compliance will result in escalating measures. I stood there on my porch, bare feet freezing against the wood planks, holding the notice between two fingers like it might bite. Escalating measures. Cute. I calmly took a photo of the letter, tucked it into my growing Beverly folder, and walked back inside. No yelling, no threats, no rage posting on the neighborhood Facebook page. Just quiet, calculated annoyance, because now it was official, Beverly had shifted from aggressive busybody to full-on rogue agent, and if she thought filing fake notices was going to scare me, she was about to get a very rude education. It started with the rumble, not thunder, not distant traffic. No, this was the deep, chest-thumping rumble of heavy machinery. I was halfway through my morning coffee when the vibrations hit the porch boards under my feet. By the time I stepped outside, mug in hand, it was already too late. A backhoe the size of a small dinosaur was parked squarely at the entrance to my driveway. Behind it, a line of orange cones stretched across the gravel, like a barricade thrown up by drunk city planners. And standing there, directing traffic with all the authority of a mall cop on Black Friday, was Beverly. Clipboard? Check. Reflective vest? Check. Tiny dog still yapping like it had a personal vendetta against tires? Check. I walked down the drive, calm as could be, sipping my coffee, while a few construction workers unloaded rolls of what looked suspiciously like irrigation piping onto my land. "Morning," I said, stopping a good 10 feet away. "New landscaping plan, or are we just upgrading the set for Mad Max Suburbia?" Beverly didn't even flinch. "Chris," she said sweetly, "today we're beginning phase 1 of the Community Enhancement Initiative. Improved drainage, widened access, beautification. You'll love it." I took another sip, slow enough that it almost qualified as a power move. Funny, I don't remember signing up for an initiative. Pretty sure I'd remember volunteering my land. She flipped through her clipboard, like maybe she'd magically find my signature if she just shuffled the pages hard enough. Under Emergency Bylaw 9B, the HOA has authority to implement immediate infrastructure corrections, on or adjacent to shared community resources. I raised an eyebrow. "And by shared community resource, you mean my private driveway?" She smiled. That tight, pinched smile that said she knew exactly how full of it she was but didn't care. "Technically," she said, "it services the community." "Technically," I shot back, "it services me, my truck, and occasionally the UPS guy when he's feeling brave." One of the workers coughed awkwardly behind his hand. Another was staring at the sky, probably praying for a sinkhole to open up and swallow him. Beverly didn't blink. She simply gestured toward the backhoe, like she was blessing a new cathedral. "We'll be done by end of day. You'll hardly notice the improvements." At that moment, the backhoe lurched forward, scraping a foot-deep gouge right across the edge of my driveway. I watched a 30-year-old oak sapling topple over, like a drunk at last call. "Hardly notice," I repeated, voice flat, and just to put a cherry on top of the crazy sundae, Beverly pulled a slip of paper from her clipboard and held it out to me. Notice of fine, non-cooperation with community improvement. $500, due in 30 days. Or, according to the small print at the bottom, the HOA reserved the right to place a lien on non-compliant properties. A lien on my property, because I had the audacity to not applaud, while they bulldozed my driveway without permission. I didn't take the fine notice, didn't rip it up, didn't yell, didn't so much as twitch. I just let it flutter to the ground between us, like the world's saddest confetti. Then I turned around and walked back to the house, coffee still in hand. Because losing your temper is what they want. They want you to scream, to threaten, to look unstable. I had no intention of giving Beverly the satisfaction. I had a better idea. If she thought she could strong-arm me with construction equipment and imaginary fines, she was about to find out what it looked like. When someone fought back with facts, law, and about 3 pounds of cold, hard documentation. Game on. The next morning, while Beverly's backhoe army presumably prepped for round 2, I was at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee brewed, and a manila folder steadily growing fatter by the minute. No rage, no revenge fantasies, just cold, methodical paperwork. The kind Beverly wouldn't see coming until it knocked the clipboards right out of her hands. First stop, the county land records. I already had a copy of my deed, but I pulled a certified digital version just to be extra annoying. Next, I downloaded the official plat map. You know, the government one that clearly outlined my lot, my private drive, and every blessed inch of land Beverly was pretending belonged to her HOA fantasy camp. Spoiler, my property wasn't shaded in HOA blue. It wasn't even outlined. It was labeled plain as day, private parcel, no association affiliation. Next up, zoning regulations. Turns out, county law didn't just protect private parcels. It actively forbade unauthorized use or modification without express written consent, kind of like a contract, or basic respect for property lines. I also checked the permits, because let's be honest, if Beverly was dumb enough to start trenching up private land without permission, odds were pretty good. She was dumb enough to forget the small step of, filing the actual construction permits. And what do you know? The Community Enhancement Initiative had no registered permits for roadwork or drainage modifications. Zip? Nada. Which meant everything she was doing. Illegal. The cherry on top? Buried deep in the HOA's own publicly posted documents was a fun little clause. The Silver Pines Homeowners Association assumes no authority over properties not included within the association boundaries, as recorded at the time of initial community establishment. In other words, they could nag their own residents into painting mailboxes taupe. But me? I was untouchable, at least legally. I compiled it all. Certified deed, plat map, HOA charter excerpt, zoning laws, lack of permits documentation, photos of the construction equipment on my property, the fine notice she tried to hand me. I didn't just want to win. I wanted to bury her in so much boring, legally backed paperwork that even thinking about my driveway gave her an anxiety rash. By noon, I had my plan. Send a formal cease and desist letter backed by the zoning and property violations. File a formal complaint with the county zoning board for unauthorized construction. Alert the sheriff's department with evidence of trespassing and property damage. Prepare a civil suit if she didn't back off immediately, damages included. Oh, and just for good measure, I called in a favor from my buddy Sam, a land use attorney who owed me for helping him fix a busted irrigation pump last year. Sam laughed so hard when I told him what was going on that he had to put me on mute. Then he said 7 words that made my whole week. Send me everything. Let's kill this thing clean. Game, set, match. Beverly wanted a war? She just handed me the nukes, and I wasn't going to waste them. I didn't go nuclear right away. That's the thing about fighting people like Beverly. You can't come in swinging like a maniac. You have to be methodical, calculated, deadly boring, in a way that makes them realize way too late that they just stepped on a landmine labeled Property Law 101. First move, I sent the cease and desist letter, hand-delivered, certified mail, email, carrier pigeon if I could have found one. I made sure there was zero chance she could later claim she hadn't been warned. Attached were the goodies, my certified deed, plat maps, zoning ordinances, photos of her construction gear vandalizing my driveway. I CC'd the entire HOA board, the county zoning office, and, just for spice, the sheriff's department non-emergency email. 2 hours after I sent the emails, Beverly replied. 4 words. Your accusations are baseless. No punctuation, no legal defense, just pure uncut arrogance. Perfect. Second move, formal complaint to the county zoning board. Turns out county officials get very interested when you send them pictures of backhoes digging up private land without permits. Even more interested when you attach copies of fake HOA compliance orders, threatening fines and liens without legal authority. The zoning investigator I spoke to, nice guy, sounded like he moonlighted as a high school football coach. Chuckled when he read Beverly's emergency beautification plan. She's, ambitious, he said diplomatically. I said, ambitious enough to bulldoze private property. He paused, then said, we'll take it from here. Third move, Sheriff's Department, filed an official trespassing report, complete with time-stamped photos and sworn affidavit. The deputy who took my report had the exact energy of a man who had seen one too many HOA board meetings end in fistfights. He just shook his head and said, we'll make sure she gets the message. And then, because I believe in finishing moves, I called my buddy Sam. Sam didn't just prepare a lawsuit, he drafted a restraining order request too, citing ongoing harassment, property damage, and unauthorized entry. By the end of the day, I had a full legal warhead, locked, loaded, and aimed squarely at Beverly's suburban fortress. And then, I waited. Not for long. Because Beverly, being Beverly, couldn't leave well enough alone. 3 days later, I woke up to the sound of music blasting from down the road. Not the good kind, either. This was HOA Parade Day, Beverly's Grand Community Unity March, where residents were supposed to drive their golf carts and cars down the newly enhanced access route to show off our shared progress. Problem was, the shared progress involved my private driveway, and this time I was ready. See, while Beverly had been busy decorating golf carts with plastic flags, I'd been busy too, right at the entrance to my driveway, technically still on my land but close enough to the road to make a point. I had installed a brand new heavy-duty solar-powered metal gate, remote-controlled, fast closing, painted bright red with bold white letters that read, "Private property, no HOA access. Trespassers will be prosecuted." And just to make sure nobody missed it, I installed a camera that live-streamed straight to the cloud. So when Beverly's little parade came bouncing around the corner, streamers flapping, kids throwing candy, they slammed face first into my new security system. I didn't even have to leave the porch. I just sipped my coffee and watched the cars bottleneck at the gate like confused cattle and listened to the distant sound of Beverly's voice rising to a full, shrill shriek. She ran up to the gate, arms waving like she was signaling planes at an airport. From my porch, I could hear her yelling, "Open the gate! This is a community event!" I leaned against the porch rail, raised my coffee cup in a casual salute, and called back, "Not my community, not my problem." The best part? The whole thing. Beverly screaming, the cars honking, the inflatable parade balloons wilting in the midday sun, was caught on the security camera feed. And because I'm nothing if not a man of the people, I forwarded the footage to the county zoning board that afternoon, along with a polite note, further evidence of unauthorized attempts to access private property in violation of standing property laws and pending complaints. By sunset, I got the email I'd been waiting for. The county had officially opened a full investigation into the Silver Pines HOA for zoning violations, unauthorized construction, and abuse of association powers. Beverly had officially crossed a line, and this time she wasn't just fighting me, she was fighting the county. Good luck with that, sweetheart. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It came in slow, beautiful waves, like watching a sandcastle collapse in stages while the tide rolls in. First wave? A letter from the county zoning board. Official, stamped, and worded with the kind of bureaucratic venom only a government office can deliver. Dear Ms. Sanderson, upon investigation, it has been determined that Silver Pines HOA has engaged in unauthorized modifications to private property, submitted fraudulent documentation regarding property boundaries, and failed to obtain required permits for construction activity. Effective immediately, all HOA infrastructure initiatives involving non-HOA parcels are suspended. Further enforcement actions are pending. Translation: stop everything. Now, I read the letter 3 times, smiling wider each time before forwarding it to the HOA's general email list. No commentary, no snarky captions, just pure, unfiltered exposure. The second wave hit 2 days later. A mandatory HOA emergency meeting called by the board. I wasn't technically a member, but thanks to a friend inside the subdivision, shout out to Dave from Lot 14, you legend, I got a copy of the recording. Picture it. Beverly sitting at the head of a folding table in the clubhouse, sweat shining under the fluorescent lights, trying to explain to 50 furious residents why construction was halted, fines were incoming, and oh yeah, the county might revoke the HOA's operating charter if they didn't clean house fast. One woman, a retired school teacher with a walker, stood up and asked point blank, "Did you really fake the road plans?" The silence after that question could have been bottled and sold as pure awkward. Beverly tried to pivot, tried to talk about community goals and vision for the future. Nobody was buying it, especially not after Dave, God bless him, stood up, waved a printout of the zoning violations in the air, and shouted, "Vision? You're about to cost us all our homes, Beverly." The third wave came faster, a petition to remove Beverly as HOA president. Minimum signatures needed? 15% of the association. Signatures gathered in the first 48 hours. 55%. By the end of the week, Beverly was officially asked to resign, which is HOA speak for leave now or will publicly set your clipboard on fire. She sent out a final email, a rambling wall of text blaming outsiders, hostile elements, and people unwilling to embrace progress. I printed it out, framed it, and hung it in my workshop under the sign that says "No idiots allowed," because some trophies you earn the hard way. But it didn't stop there. The county wasn't content with just a slap on the wrist. They fined the HOA for unauthorized construction, invalidated all pending permits tied to Beverly's enhancement projects, and opened a separate investigation into the financial handling of HOA dues under her leadership. Word around the subdivision was ugly, lawsuits brewing, neighbors suing neighbors, people demanding refunds for beautification fees that apparently disappeared into thin air. Meanwhile, Beverly's house, the grand colonial she was so proud of, Quietly went up for sale. Motivated seller, price to move. I guess the new vision for Silver Pines didn't include federal audits and civil litigation? Funny how that works. One afternoon, maybe 2 weeks after the final fallout, I was sitting on my porch when a white SUV pulled into Beverly's driveway. She came out, shoulders slumped, dragging boxes behind her like a ghost. No clipboard, no pastel power suits, no barking orders, just a middle-aged woman, packing up the wreckage of her own bad decisions. I didn't wave. She didn't look my way. We both knew she lost. Not because I screamed the loudest, not because I threw punches, but because I stayed calm, stayed smart, and let the truth do the heavy lifting. People like Beverly always think they can out-bluff, out-bully, or outlast anyone who pushes back. What they don't realize is, some of us aren't bluffing. Some of us are just waiting. And when the waiting ends, the whole house of cards falls faster. Then you can say unauthorized infrastructure enhancement. Life got quiet after Beverly left. Not immediately. There was still some drama to mop up, leftover hard feelings leaking out at HOA meetings like bad plumbing. But around my little slice of the ridge, things finally settled. No more construction trucks rattling past at dawn. No more random survey flags sprouting like invasive weeds. No more duct-taped compliance notices showing up on my mailbox like sad little death threats. Just trees, gravel, hawks circling lazy loops overhead. The way it was supposed to be. One evening, a few weeks after the dust finally finished settling, I was sitting on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee, watching the last sliver of sun burn out behind the hills, when a new neighbor wandered up. You could always spot the new ones. They moved different, still waving at every car, still pretending HOA politics didn't exist. This one was mid-30s, baseball cap, looked like he either worked construction or ran from it. He stood at the foot of the porch, one hand on his hip, kind of half smiling like he wasn't sure if he was interrupting something sacred. "Hey," he said. "You Chris?" "Depends who's asking," I said, deadpan. He laughed. Good start. "I'm Mike," he said. "Bought lot 7 a couple months ago. Been meaning to come by. Heard a rumor you were the guy who stopped the HOA from turning your driveway into Main Street." I shrugged. Depends who's telling the story. He looked down at the fresh gravel I'd laid across the entrance, then back up at me. "Honestly?" he said. "Glad you did. Thought I was going to have to start mowing my driveway to code." I raised my coffee cup in salute. "Welcome to Silver Pines. Rule number 1, mind your business. Rule number 2, stay off my driveway." He grinned and nodded, heading back down the hill. And just like that, it felt official. The war was over. The lines were drawn, and nobody was stupid enough to cross them again. Before I went inside, I took one last slow walk down to the gate. The heavy red letters still gleamed in the twilight. Private property. No HOA access. But now there was something new, too. Mounted just above the sign, polished and shining under a little solar-powered spotlight, was a small, custom-engraved metal plaque. It read, "Some walls are built from wood, others from lessons." A quiet reminder, not just for Beverly wherever she'd ended up, for anyone else. Whoever got it in their head that my peace, my land, or my freedom was some kind of negotiable asset, it wasn't. Not back then, not now, not ever. I turned back toward the porch, coffee still warm in my hand, the night settling soft and clean over the ridge. No clipboard warriors, no fake bylaws, no trespassing, just silence, earned, defended, and fully, finally, mine.